Horror Minute is rated R. The Rocky Horror Picture Show is also rated R. We're going to spend this time discussing the movie in gory detail, and along the road we will talk about some adult content and use some of our favorite swear words.
Fudge, taffy, macaron, baklava, eclair.
Consider yourselves warned. Welcome to Rocky Horror Minute, the podcast where we talk about the Rocky Horror Picture Show in excruciating detail, one measly minute at a time. I'm one of your hosts, Leandra.
And I am your other host, Kelly.
And we are here with Eric Deutsch of Flash Gordon Minute and Escape from New York Minute. And unfortunately, his time with us is coming to an end.
Yes.
His time on this earth is coming to an end, for that matter.
Yes.
Yeah.
But before we sacrifice him to Perry Bedden, let's talk about this minute that we're in. Kelly, do you have some description of what's going on?
Sure. So where we last left off, we had the crowd singing, let's do the tie. And so here they continue, warp again. Let's do the time warp again. Everybody falls to the floor besides Brad and Janet and just kind of lies there. It's awkward. Brad and Janet just stand there, and then Janet says to Brad, "Say something." And he goes, "Say, do any of you guys know how to Madison?" Which embarrasses Janet. She cringes. And then she starts backing up with him and says, "Brad, please, let's get out of here." And he says, what does he say there, Leandra? I'm sorry. I know Janet's lines. I don't know Brad's lines. But yeah, that's right. For God's sakes, get a grip on yourself, Janet. And she says, "But it seems so unhealthy here," right? That's the next line.
She at least says, "But it seems so un."
Well, right. But that's the next line, right?
Yeah.
So, right. She says, "But it seems so un," and that's the end of the minute. I just wanted to make sure I didn't forget one. Sorry, guys. I do Janet's lines, but not Brad's. So anyway.
I'm going to be honest with you. I've been playing Brad for, I think, a decade now, and it wasn't until, I think, last year that I finally was like, fine, I guess I need to know his lines for this piece. And I begrudgingly learned them. Because in my mind, I only play magenta. That's not true, but it's what I think.
Not remotely true. Do you play every role?
I do.
Yeah, I think I've seen you in every role. Some you have the opportunity to play more than others, but you're fantastic in every role, Leandra, and I'm not just saying that.
Don't stop.
So what do we think about this minute, guys?
Eric, let's start with you.
Well, my favorite dancer, once again, gets a really interesting shot here. We had a little oral sex simulation going on there. Around second 17, as we shoot between the guy's crotch and the short woman is there seen in the shot inside his crotch. And as they move back and forth, it's pretty blatant shot there.
Yeah. And I can only imagine how delighted she was to be in that scene. I never got to meet her, but she, from all accounts, was just the sweetest, most fun person to be around, and I'm sure that she had a great time doing that.
Yeah, I mean, you want to have a great time when you're doing that.
I mean, it beats the alternative, does it not?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, that's a good thing to note. There's a lot of great Transylvanian close-ups in this minute.
And one that's my least favorite, but we'll get to that one a little bit later. I think that before we do that, I want to talk about we've talked a fair amount about how Brad keeps going, "This is totally fine and normal. I'm good with all of this. I just don't want to interrupt what is obviously an important evening for you." And Janet is like, "No, sir, this is not what I want out of my life." And Janet, in this minute, finally gets Brad's attention and convinces him that they should be making their way to an exit. And Brad just looks mildly disappointed and kind of embarrassed that Janet is making such a big deal out of it.
At this point, is Janet wrong? I almost think at this point I'm on Brad's side. Nothing that weird has happened, and it does just kind of look like a party.
I hate people, so if I knew that there was a party, I would have left.
That's fair, but from Brad's point of view, they just walked a few miles in the rain to get to a phone, and she's been just ever since they reached the castle before they even rang the doorbell, she's been like, let's just walk back to the car and I guess die there. Like, it's the 70s, so they don't have any other way of contacting help.
As we've already determined, this would not be a problem for me because I wouldn't have left the car. I would have gone, damn, that's crazy. Good thing I have a newspaper.
Janet's first mistake, absolutely. In those shoes, I can barely get through a show in those shoes.
Yeah, so, I'd take a look and see how far away the castle was and go, no, maybe you can drive it. Drive on a flat. I believe in you.
And she had just gone through what seemed to be a huge amount of chocolate, too, so she was good for a couple days. I think, personally, though, that Janet may be overreacting a bit to what is just a weird party. She hasn't seen anything horrifying yet.
I mean, spoken like a true extrovert, I think that all of this is horrifying.
Yeah, I don't know. True. I think that a few minutes ago, Magenta sliding down the banisters saying how everybody's lucky. That was pretty horrifying.
I'd probably walk out. I'd be like, you know what? Just realized I will blow up the tire myself.
I mean, the skeleton and the riffraffs opening up and showing them a skeleton. I think I disagree there.
And then they finish dancing and fall.
Yeah, if I really thought the skeleton was real, I guess that would be enough to freak me out. That would not be my assumption, though. Of course, we know it was real, but I mean, the weird thing is, well, these are future minute discussions, but the weird thing is when she comes around, it's like after she really has seen legitimately horrible things.
I think that at that point, she's like, you know what? Something has changed in me. Something has snapped. I am not the same person that I was when I first walked in that door. And I don't know if I'm a better person, but I am a different person.
Yeah, that's fair. And I guess that's where I am right now.
So
take that as you will.
I know that we haven't talked about the criminologist at all in the past couple of minutes, but that's because he's really just been taking us through the steps of the time warp and sometimes varying things a little bit, gesturing to the steps. But it's in this minute that he gets on top of his desk and he starts dancing very enthusiastically. And I just want to remind everybody that Charles Gray, who was a man who was in not one but 2 Bond films, is now jazz handing and having a blessed time while teaching me how to time warp, all while smoking a cigarette. And that's not considered the weirdest thing about this movie. I can't really honestly, wrap my mind around that.
Yeah, I love Charles Gray's general descent into wackiness throughout the time warp.
Well, you love Charles Gray, though. He's on your top 2 list.
Yeah, well, I do. That's true. Charlie Gray, perhaps. But yeah, I mean, the whole on the desk moment is really entertaining for me.
So then when we pan back, we see Brad and Janet, and they're trying to look as natural and kind of faux nonchalant as possible. And they're just very casually trying to make their way to the exit, which is something that I've done, hopefully in a better, more convincing way. But I'm thinking, looking back, probably not. And I definitely resonate with them in that moment.
Yeah, we've all been there. Absolutely. To where you're kind of trying to casually remove yourself from a situation.
And Eric, that won't work. You're still getting murdered.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, unfortunately, you're finishing out the time warp with us. Sorry.
I didn't think you would notice the extra 4.5 inches I'd edged towards the door while we've been speaking.
Did your voice sound more distant?
No, of course not.
But
hey, wait a minute. I know that we've talked about Sadie and her kind of oral sex, the movement through the the kind of tail end of Time Warp, but some of the other Transylvanians in this are also doing some fun stuff. The pelvic thrust close-up has the three, arguably most talented Transylvanian dancers, which of course are Annabelle Levinton, Pamela Obermeyer, aka Bethany Brown, but more on that later, I super duper promise, and Imogene Claire. And they all have their hands more or less on the front of their hips instead of the sides, and that makes them look very kind of disjointed, like their shoulders have been dislocated, and it's very, very creepy looking at just a still from that moment. But I'm guessing that that's probably what the choreography was supposed to be, and nobody else really committed to it quite that way, which is why they get the close-up. We do also see fun close-ups of Kimmy in this minute, and her spastic movements are, I think, the most chaotic, but also the most youthful and vibrant.
Yeah.
And my least favorite of the close-ups in this is Fran Fullenwider after they've all fallen down. I genuinely hate the series of callbacks that you can have in that moment, because they're all just about how it's a fat person on the ground. And I'm like, yeah, that's clever. But
right, yeah.
And I won't derail the conversation about this right now, but I want you to remember for a future minute that right now, Fran Fullenwider is wearing a little green hat. And I just want you to keep that in your mind, that it's a little green hat. Later, it's not going to be a little green hat. She's going to change her hat for no reason at all.
I have the same issue with a lot of the Transylvanian costumes. They change very arbitrarily, which when you're trying to get one together makes it hard.
The thing that actually stuck out to me about her in this after they all fall down is they're all supposed to be lying there still, and I don't know if she thought the director yelled cut, but she reaches up to like scratch her neck or her chin or something like that.
Yeah, it's very much a thing that I've seen actors do when you're like, okay, stay still. You too, asshole.
Yeah, the commentary had a pretty interesting story here. Patricia Quinn was saying that I guess Fran Fullenwider got in trouble with Jim Sharman because she kept having a coughing fit, I guess, and he was in a bad mood. So he was like yelling at her, and according to Patricia Quinn, she called like a little mini strike until they were nicer to Fran Fullenwider. So
yeah, I can't wait until we have nothing to talk about during lab scene, and I can tell you everything I know about Fran, because she had a very interesting and fun life as a model in Italy, among other things.
Yeah, I would have loved to have met her. I know it was never a possibility, but
well, she died in 94. You could have met her as a young child, right? You were born before then, I would hope.
Yes, I was, but not much before then. I was born in 91.
Ah.
I know.
Oh.
I know, I'm so old.
If that upsets you, you should be taking Metamucil. So that does segue pretty well into my next kind of point. When all the Transylvanians fall down, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't always do that piece of the choreography if I am doing the time warp, because I'm of a certain age that if I fall down, I need to really make sure that I'm going to have enough energy to get back up again. So unless it's like literally Halloween, there's a chance that I am just sitting right down in like a seat, or maybe I'm just falling down as much as I can. I know that when we did this at my wedding, I did not fall down because I was wearing a wedding dress, but I think everybody else did for the most part.
Yeah, I did, and I was in a sequin dress.
You sure were. It's more like a sequin shirt.
Yeah.
Another thing just to throw out there detail-wise is, and I'm pretty sure we've spoken about this in the past, but you get a couple of really good shots of the flipped Mona Lisas on either side of the doorway. And I think that's pretty swell. It's definitely at this point that if Brad thinks that nothing is wrong, he may plausibly be able to go like, okay, well, nothing weird has happened. But as soon as everybody starts getting back up, everybody who just finished doing the time warp just starts smiling at them.
Yeah.
They're
They're
so
really creepy.
gleeful, and it's terrifying. Except for Riff, he looks like his GQ posing.
It's almost like they forgot Brad and Janet were there, because as soon as he draws attention to himself, they start doing that really creepy getting up and grinning and kind of inching towards him.
They look like they're trying to get him to do a board game.
Yeah.
Because as we know, the only thing worse than poly couples are board game couples.
That's true, exactly. It's very menacing, but I honestly feel like they just got so into the time warp they forgot about the creepy newcomers.
Those are all of the specific notes I have. I have a couple of callbacks, but I'm sure you do too.
Well, I have a couple other notes too.
Oh,
not much. I was just going to say two things about the dance. First of all, the hand and leg move that they do at the end of Time Warp, where you're basically kicking one leg and like lifting the other arm in the air at the same time, is so much harder than it looks. I fuck that up nearly every single time.
I'd say that's one of the easier parts for me, but
Really?
yeah.
Okay, well, brag more, bitch. But seriously, I don't know. For me, doing the alternate hand and leg is so hard. And also, like, especially when I'm playing magenta, the boots that I wear when I'm trying to be really screen accurate with my costume, I have a really hard time balancing in because they are like big, spike heels. So yeah, anyway, it's hard for me. The other thing I was going to say is that the collapse, is that part of the dance, or do we think it's just happened because they got too into it and like tired out? It was like
it's crashing. I mean, everybody was completely high, right? I mean,
right, yeah.
they're just crashing.
This reminds me of like Ring Around the Rosie, and at the end, everyone falls down. This seems very much like that sort of energy.
Well, it's like that dance mania thing that hit that like medieval village or whatever, right? Where they all just danced until they died of exhaustion.
And I definitely love the concept of really all musicals where people all know the words, they all know the choreography, and they all stop at the same time. So there's a little bit of that too, where people are like, okay, well, and now it's over.
Right. That does make sense, yeah. So that was just something that I've always wondered. I go back and forth on whether or not I think it was like planned or whether they just got so tuckered out. Before we go into callbacks, Eric, did you have any other notes?
I didn't have anything else for this minute. The only other thing that I really wanted to say in general is the riffraff Richard O'Brien voice, and the whole reason that I responded to your call for volunteers to come on the show is, of course, he's in Flash Gordon, and I knew him from that, of course, long before I had ever even heard of Rocky Horror Picture Show, and I loved his voice just from that. So I've always loved trying to do a Richard O'Brien impression. He's got one of the most distinctive, most fascinating voices in any movie I've ever seen, and I did break it out a couple of minutes on Flash Gordon Minute, so I was very happy to have the opportunity to bust it out again after a couple of years here on your show. Just that voice is just awesome.
And you've been such a joy to have on the show. I completely agree that Richard O'Brien's iconic voice really makes a huge difference in this movie. If you listen to the Rocky Horror Show, like every recording I've ever heard of it, the riffraff character, it has a very different energy. it's like more energetic. The music in general in the Rocky Horror Show tends to be more up tempo. Do you agree with that, Leandra, that the character is very different when not played
Well,
by Richard O'Brien?
I think so. I think that most Rocky Horror shows either try very hard to be very different from the movie and from the original cast, or they try to be very similar. So I've seen it
Right.
go both ways. And
Yeah.
I find that unless you have somebody who can really do a good Richard O'Brien impersonation, such as our dear friend Eric,
Yeah.
if you have that, then that's a very good choice. If you don't, then going in a completely different direction is absolutely the better choice because I've seen it go that way and it wasn't fantastic.
So yeah, it's interesting to think like if they had stuck with the original type of character, how different the movie would be. But I like not that I would ever want Richard O'Brien to not be in this movie playing Riff. It's funny to think how these little choices have impacted like so much in my life and all of us who shadow cast it and everything.
It's the butterfly effect, also an Ashton Kutcher film.
Yeah, Ashton Kutcher, our web of connections to the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
So we've wrapped up Time Warp. How do you rank this?
Oh, that's right. We have to rate the song. You guys go first.
Well, I guess on a scale of 1 to 10, which, if I recall from the last one, is how we. Why are you shaking your head?
No, it's 1 to 5. You think this every time.
Oh no!
We've been doing it out of 5 stars.
I'm really upset. Okay, so if it's out of 5 stars, I don't know. This is the most nostalgic of the songs for me. The one that if you said you can only listen to one of these for the rest of your life and all of them will be erased from everybody's memory ever, and all of ever, which would never happen, I get, it would probably be this one that I save. So for that, I'd say that it has a 5. But for a song that I want to listen to and would like to just on its own hear it, I don't know that it ranks super high up for me. So I think for that, I'd give it probably like a 4.
So is your rating a 4?
It's a 4.5. I've averaged them. Thank you.
Wow. Super math genius over here. All right.
What can I say? I have that many fingers.
You have 4.5 fingers?
At least.
Eric, what about you?
Well, I mean, this song and Science Fiction Double Feature are my 2 favorite songs in this movie, and I was quite excited to be on for this song, so it's most certainly a 5 for me.
I think for me it's a 4. It's a great song, an amazing song, obviously the most iconic from the movie. It really gets everybody out of their seats. Unlike the other 2 songs, well, no, we've rated 3 songs so far. Unlike the 2 songs that I gave a 5, I wouldn't listen to this one outside of the context of Rocky Horror. I wouldn't just throw it on one of my playlists to just chill out to, except maybe a Halloween playlist.
Do you two think that this song suffers from being overplayed?
To me, yes. To the general public, I don't know. But to me, like, it's what people know from the Rocky Horror Picture Show. So in that way, I've definitely just been overexposed to it probably. Now, it's so great that doesn't do a lot to diminish it in my mind, but I do think that like there's other songs that could get more love from the movie. Or the entire soundtrack of Shock Treatment. Learn more about that in Shock Treatment Minute.
Yay.
You're going to love it.
I will certainly experience it along with other people. But to answer your question, Eric, I don't know that I would say that it's overplayed. Growing up, this was such an important Halloween song for me that I think that if I hadn't heard it 500 times on Halloween night, or the several days leading up to Halloween, I don't think that I'd really feel like I'd done a good Halloween job of preparing myself. But I don't feel like I hear it as much anymore. So I don't know if it's just falling out of favor, or if I don't go to children's dances where they have different Monster Mash and One-Eyed One-Horned Flying Purple People Eater sorts of songs.
That's true. There was a time in my life where hearing Time Warp would make me cry, because I used to go to these science camps. I was very cool kid, very popular, as you can imagine. But seriously, I used to go to these like 3-week science camps that would be at like college campuses, and they would have dances every week, and Time Warp was always played at them, like we've talked about, just like they were played at my middle school dances. But anyway, because it was such a big thing, it would be really nostalgic for me. So I used to have this really emotional connection to Time Warp specifically because of that.
Well, what do you think, Eric?
I think that it possibly. I mean, I still love the song, but I asked the question because I do think it's one of those songs that over the years was probably overplayed. I think I agree that it's not so much in recent history. It's maybe more from like when I was in junior high and high school and college. I definitely heard it a lot more. But I do think it's a song that has suffered from becoming a bit too ubiquitous.
When somebody goes, "Oh, I'm not sure that I know what the Rocky Horror Picture Show is," I go, "Oh, have you heard the Time Warp?" And if they have, I go, "Yeah, it's from Time Warp's from the Rocky Horror Picture Show." They go, "Oh, okay." That's very much the first talking point that I go to,
right,
if I'm trying to see, like, I think you do know about this.
It's great. It's just, like I said, there's other songs on the soundtrack that I think, like, for me, I'm surprised, I guess, that Science Fiction Double Feature isn't the song that is, like, synonymous with the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Well, you don't tell people to get up and dance during it, and anything that
That's
makes
true.
that makes people get up and dance is pretty exciting. Like, I don't think that I would necessarily listen to the Cupid Shuffle for its musical merit.
No, that's true. Also, I guess I should take that back, since Science Fiction Double Feature wasn't even written for the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
But let's go ahead and dig on into callbacks now.
Yes.
I don't have a huge number of these, and I actually think that you may have a couple more than me.
Me?
Yeah, you.
I can try it. Well, so we talked a little bit about the criminologist up on his desk, and while he's doing it, he's like frantically screaming, "It's just a jump to the left!" And you can yell along with him, "Get the fuck off your desk!" Like in the same cadence, which is fun. Because really, don't get up on your desk, dude. So right before, well, Janet says, "Brad, say something," you say something stupid. And then he says, "Say, do any of you guys know how to Madison?" And then you can even respond to that, "That is stupid. Everyone knows how to Madison.
But only I know how to Green Bay."
Yeah, I was going to say, you can also say, "Everyone knows how to Madison, but only I know how to Green Bay." Fun. If you're not from the United States, those are cities in Wisconsin.
I used to live in Madison.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
So do you know how to Madison?
No.
Do you know what that is even?
I assume it's a dance.
Yeah. It's probably like some type of swing dance or something.
It is kind of an early protean swing dance. It's really closer to 1920s big band.
Okay.
It's shortly after the Charleston.
I should have known you would know. So, all right, I guess correctly. And those are the only ones I have, though, so I really don't have that many.
The only other ones that I have are kind of similar to the does anybody know how to Madison, or do you guys know how to Madison? The another one of the callbacks that I think has been retired for the most part is people used to say, "No, but I do the rock myself." And that's because Tim Curry had a song that it sounded like snorting cocaine, but it was called The Rock, or I Do the Rock, rather.
Yeah, very
and
subtle.
it was very, very good. There was even in the music video for it, there were shadow casters in it. So it was very much a Rocky Horror thing. People would show it before the movie, along with Paradise by the Dashboard Light, which I don't think is super surprising. But I digress. When Brad says, "Get a grip on yourself, Janet," a callback that you can say is, "In front of all these people?"
I get it. That's funny.
Yeah. But really, that's really it.
I guess that's all we got. Eric, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners, or you want to say goodbye to your family or anything?
Well, I don't know how I ended up in these woods. I'm not sure what the hell's going on right now.
Yeah,
It's
you'll meet our
okay.
friend Perry very soon.
Yeah, he's not Shia LaBeouf, but he still will kill you.
Ugh.
I guess
So,
thankfully he's not Shia LaBeouf.
Yes. We can all be thankful that none of us are Shia LaBeouf.
yeah, mindless cannibal. All right. Well, if that's all we got, I guess we can sign off the way we sign off every show.
And we do that with now. You don't have to go
home,
but you can't stay here. So get the fuck out.
Yeah, I love Charles Gray's big cock